So, alright, so first and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Kakodash. We said about our personal Eloh's agreements and the word teaches our personal truth. And we see salutations, so they are constantly pushing with no truth and sincerity, day in and day out, and constantly in season and season. We say Shalom. And once again, going into a video here, and this basically touching upon this post, right? Now, the first post was stated, love spells are acts of deception. Now, when I actually go into what love spells are, is a form of sorcery, form of witchcraft, right? Now, these women, they go to these witches, they go to these warlocks, in different parts of the world, they had different names for them. Like in the Caribbean here, they would say the Obia man or the Obia woman. They might even say mother, right? Now, when I play this video, she said something similar along those lines, right? But it's a very important thing that you pay close attention to these women that you have in your life, because they could be doing some of these things outside there, going to these witches and warlocks and to do what? To use these love spells to maybe send a spirit. And these are the kind of things that they do, right? Especially majority of these young women are turning to these witches, right? They are flocking to them. I believe, like, if you go up on Google and you type in these statistics, you would see that there's a high increase, right? These people, they wouldn't turn to the Lord, but what they would turn to is these idols. They would turn to these witches, these wizards, and so forth for help, but they would never turn to the Lord, right? Even there was a point in time, and I believe that information is still outside there, where women will leave in the churches and become what they were saying, something Christianity they was calling it, is like Christian witches, right? I believe that article is still outside there, or the video of it. They will leave in Christianity to become Christian witches, right? But nonetheless, before I play the video, I'd like to bring on the scripture here. This is the book of Leviticus chapter 19, and I'll go to verse 31. It says, regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Now, before I expound, let me see if I get this in the NLT, right? Leviticus 19, Leviticus 19 verse 31. So in the NLT it said, do not defile yourselves by turning to mediums or to those who consult the spirits of the dead. I am the Lord your God, right? So one time you read in the law that you're not supposed to consult, right, to mediums, to witches, turn to these wizards, right, turn onto these familiar spirits, right, and so forth, right? So, but these women, right, especially these women, there are men that do the same, but especially these women, they go onto these witches, they turn onto these witches, right? Hey, especially, in the Caribbean here, these jakes down here, they're heavy into it, right? They're heavy into it. There's be boasting all online about it, they went by they went my mother. So mother is a term that is used for a high class witch, in the Caribbean here. So they'll say, I went to mother and I take a man from you, and that's how they just be song, and that's the kind of videos that is be putting out, right? So it's a regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God, right? I am the Lord your God. So that is who is supposed to be seeking. Is who is seeking after the Lord, right? So so let's go to, before I continue into the video, I also want to say something like, there are many other forms of it, like, for example, the crystal ball, right? Some of these women turn into the astrology, right? All these things are things that they're not supposed to be dealing in at all. Now they want to say the word manifest. They love this, the manifest belief outside there. Now when they go and look up that, there's actually a form, a following, right? The manifestation and the universe and all these things is a following. They go back to my idol, right? So let's play the video here. take a pause, and you hear the things she using the honey jars and all this other stuff. These things that even with majority of jakes, they hear about these things. You grow up in a little village, you grow up in a neighborhood, you hear about these things, and your mother, like for example, for me, the older people in my family, they used to say, pay attention to the woman who you're going on to, because these women, they will take your hair, they will take your slippers, they will take your clothes. you know there's also something to do with they put the period blood in your food. They believe that will trap you. These are the kind of things you have to pay attention to. And hey, hey, out of woman come much more wickedness, right? Let me go to the scripture here. This is the book of Leviticus chapter 20 verse 6. It says, and the soul that turneth after such as having familiar spirits, and after wizards, to go a whoring after them, I will even set my face against that soul, and I will cut him off from among his people. Right? So it goes to show that you're not supposed to be going into familiar spirits after wizards and so forth. Right? Let me just read that in the NLT as well. Leviticus 20 verse 6. It says, I will also turn against those who commit spiritual prostitution by putting their trust in mediums or in those who consult the spirits of the dead. I will cut them off from the community, right? And as I said before, there was a judgment for a witch. Let me see if I got that here quick. All right, this is the book of Exodus, chapter 22, verse 18. It says, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. And that is straight to the point, right? Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, right? So you see, one time is something is being a witch. You don't have that, right? And going on to them is wrong, right? And she give a whole recap, and there's more from it. I wouldn't play the whole video, but there's more from it. She was saying, how the woman was using jars and writing on a name, and if she wanted it to do this, she would have get to do this. These is things that we hear growing up. So let's play a little piece again. Can I pause? I'm going through a little internet problems. But let me jump back to Leviticus chapter 20, verse 27, right? Let me read from verse 26. It says, and ye shall be holy unto me, for I the Lord am holy, and have served you, and I've severed you from other people, right? Severed you from other people, that you should be mine. A man also, or woman that had a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death, right? So the woman she talking about was supposed to be put to death, right? Because what is she doing? She going on to familiar spirits, and she also teaching people to do the same, right? It says, shall surely be put to death. They shall stone them with stones. Their blood shall be upon them, right? So it goes to show how far you're dealing with them things. You're going to take it. So see what? Put to death. So continue. Let me see. Right. No, as she says, she used to do it. So it goes to show who could tell that she must be still doing it, or she must even passing it on, because most likely she's in America here, and even in the Caribbean, what she just said was something that women do down here, right? As I said before, like if you go and look up right now, these young women, they're boasting about doing these things, chopping a man, putting the period blood in his food, these are the kind of things that they find joy in, right? Going whoring after these idols, these spirits, these witches, right? So the scripture say, a man also or woman that had a familiar spirit, or that is a wizard, shall surely be put to death. Shall be put to what? To death, right? It say, they shall stone them with stones, their blood shall be upon them, right? So one time, you're not supposed to be doing these things, but again, women, And I to emphasize upon the woman, because usually, like, if you watch the ratio, it's more women that do these kind of things. You hear them talking about astrology. Um, they would tell a man he's not compatible because he's a different, um, what's the name for it? A different, um, whatever they just call it. You know what I mean? Like Virgo, Cancer. They would tell them, no, you're not capable, and then they would believe in the writings of those things, right? And then they would use terms like manifestation and all this other stuff, the universe, and then they would do this potion, the love spells, the potions, the right, the food stuff, the stones and many other things that they do, that these women, they, if you really and truly watch some of these women outside there and they pay attention, you would see they really is witches, right? Because these are the kind of things that they're dealing in, and that's why it's supposed to be really and truly, hey, don't go into these women, you know. Hey, next thing you know, you're fighting a spirit. You understand? So play. Um, it's getting a little internet problems, but let me see if I play. Right. She's saying all her stuff work, and it's just the left hand side, right? And again, that is where you get in the midst of these women much wickedness, because here the kind of things, this older woman telling her to do, to turn to witches, to turn to familiar spirit, right? The book of Deuteronomy chapter 18 verse 11, right? Matter of fact, let me go to verse let me read from verse 9. Say, when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn to do after the abomination of those nations. There shall not be found among you any one that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire. Right? They say, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or witch. So let's look up this meaning, this word here, right? Let's say, when you look at the word divination, it means witchcraft. It say of the nations of Balaam, right? It say, or of false prophets in good king's lips as oracles. It say also divination. It's an oracle word, witchcraft, right? So going back to the scripture, it say what? It say, there shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, right? Or that useth divination. So one time, you already know that the person who was telling you to do this totally off, right? Say, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, right? And when you look up the word enchanter, there it says to practice divination, observe times, learn by experience, right? It says to practice divination. So basically, to observe the signs or omens, right? It's a properly to his that is a whisper, a magic or spell. And we read in the beginning, say what? The person asks about love spells, and what is she talking about here, right? Just say it's safe. So going back to the scripture, it's a or that use of divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, It say, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. Let me just go back here now to this particular scripture here. Right, necromancer. When you look it up, it says to resort to seek with care, require. No, not this one I want to see. Nah, I ain't getting the meaning that I technically want. Yeah, I ain't getting the meaning. So let me just look it up on Google here quick. Necromancer. Right. It's a necromancer meaning. Right. They give a necromancy. But when you look at it, even necromancy says so. A necromancer is a person who practices necromancy, a wizard or a magician. A wizard or a magician, we know read that one time those things are wrong, right? Those things are wrong. So let's say one who practice necromancy, right? And when you look at the word necromancy, you say the post practice of communicating with the dead, especially in order to predict the future, right? So all these things are wrong. And again, like plenty of these women, they turn into that. They're going on to necromancers, they're going on to wizards, witches, plenty of them, right? They believe in just in what it is this woman saying here. Plenty of them are doing it. So beware of these women. Beware of these women outside here, right? Next thing you know, you lift up your bed and you find some sort of spell going on. It's a plenty men gives these particular accounts, right?
Write his name down and put it in a jar and put it in some water and hide it in the house.
And this it's taking a little bit, but nonetheless, I feel I might do a part to it, but I might also bring accounts where men, they catch their wives doing it, right? So it say, or a charmer, Deuteronomy 18 verse 11, it say, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. Verse 12, it say, for all that do these things are an abomination to the Lord. So that is an abomination. We know the scripture say, well, the Lord hated all abomination, right? So it say, for all that do these things are an abomination to the Lord. And because of these abominations, the Lord thy God, thou drive them out from before thee. Right? They say, thou shalt be perfect with the Lord thy God. Right? So one time, these things are wrong. Right? It's totally off. And if you're doing these things, it's wrong. Like you believe in the astrology, the observant times, going on from familiar spirits, right? Going on to wizards, witches, necromancers, enchanters, wherever it may be, those things are an abomination to the Lord. Right? And as you could see from the comments here, you can see how much people, that dabble and dabble in it. Right? This person might come and write money on a piece of paper and put it in a jar. So you see, right? This person might say nobody go and mention a ghost walking through behind, and if it truly was something, that the Lord sent that spirit there, right? This person Mark Hoodoo helped so many black people, especially black women. We're not throwing it away because you can't take accountability and pick better men to have kids with. So you can see, there are people that believe in it. Jigs that truly believe in it, that they will turn to these spirits, right? To this witchcraft, to the sorcery, right? So again, beware of these women. You see how much women here in this comment section here. Says for some girl when they hear my story, haven't touched and won't touch another love spell in my life. So you see how much women in it here. Hey, so with that, once again, I give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yoshai, Ba'ashem, Kakodash. We said about the apostle and elders of Remus and Rural teachers of apostle in truth, and we see salutation so they are separation within the truth and sincerity, day in and day out, and constantly in season and season. We say, Shalom.